Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I have a feature lined up for you guys over the next few episodes. We may have some breaks in between, but what I have decided to do as part of the E-commerce Edge podcast is to collaborate with Thoughtspark on a series of podcast episodes around PIM systems, product information management platforms, PIM, MDM, master data management platforms for B2B brands, for B2B businesses, for B2B sellers. And the reason why I decided to come up with this series is because I see a tremendous amount of talk in our industry around PIM systems for retailers, D2C retailers, B2C retailers, omni-channel retailers, people that are selling physical products in retail stores, online, through digital channels, through marketplaces, through social channels, etc. And the challenge with that is that it is all retail focused. And the biggest challenge around that is that PIM systems, don't just have applications for B2C and D2C retailers. They have applications in the B2B world too. And in fact, I would argue that in many instances, PIM and MDM systems actually have broader and deeper application and a bigger impact in the B2B world than they can in the B2C and D2C world. And one of the reasons behind that is because of the scale and complexity of data that typically exists around products in the B2B world versus simpler. In the B2C and D2C world, products are usually pretty recognizable. If I see a retailer selling TVs, I know what a TV is. If I see a retailer selling a coffee cup, I know what a coffee cup is. If I see a retailer selling a t-shirt, I know what a t-shirt is, right? And okay, maybe there's some color and maybe there's a design and maybe there's a size I got to think about. But other than that, I recognize 99% of the products that I see on a standard B2C retail website. Not true in the B2B world. B2B products tend to be more complex. They tend to have more complex sales cycles as a result. They tend to have very specific applications of those products in the world. And as a result of that, I thought, why don't I collaborate with my partners over at Thoughtspark? And so what I did is I reached out and I said, do you guys want to do a podcast series talking specifically about PIM, MDM in the B2B world? And they said, yes, we're in. And so I would love to introduce to you today Shyam Pata from Thoughtspark. Thank you so much for joining me today, Shyam.
Hi, hello everyone. This is Shyam Pota. I am from Thoughtspark. I lead solutions and data strategy at Thoughtspark. My background has been in data almost 25 years now. I started my career in data, master data, PIM, MDM. In 2001, when Riverside, one of the leaders in this space, actually started. And I built my life, I built my career, I built my journey through Riverside all the way. And have been in this space, have done very large implementations, blueprinting for large organizations. And after the exit of Riverside, I have joined Thoughtspark as a consultant, as a senior consultant, helping further refine the data strategy for Thoughtspark. And Thoughtspark, as you all know, is one of the enablers in the Syndigo platform, Syndigo ecosystem. They have many years, close to 10 years of experience implementing PIM and enhancing PIM softwares. So we are excited. We are excited about this whole space. We are excited about what the opportunities lie in this space. Jason was talking about this is a 25-year-old space and it's still not even close to being done. It looks like we are just getting started. There's not enough material out there. There's not enough information out there on best practices. Either it's very fragmented or it's just the industry has not come together with a unifying thought process. And that's, I guess, our job to do, build out that thought process so that companies really start seeing value short-term and long-term from these technologies and data really. So thank you, Jason, for having me here and looking forward to this podcast.
Me too. And look, just to set the scene, there's probably a lot of B2B brands out there that are on the smaller end of town, maybe $50 million or a year or less in GMV. They're wondering how and where does a PIM fit into my technology stack? Does it need to be there? Is it going to add value? Because the reality is that PIM is not cheap. PIM MDM solutions, they're not cheap. Even from a pure technology cost perspective, on an annual basis, you can spend anywhere from sort of 50 grand a year to $500,000 a year on PIM MDM solutions. And then the implementations themselves, they're not fast and they're not cheap. They typically, I see most PIM implementations lasting anywhere from 3 to 12 months, depending on the scale of the implementation and depending on how much custom logic needs to be in the PIM and custom workflows, etc., and how large the organization is, how big the catalog is, how complex the catalog is, how many layers of data need to be associated with products, and how many product relationships need to be built out and product data objects need to be built out. And I think that there's a little bit of confusion sometimes in the industry about what is the difference between PIM, MDM, PLM systems, DAM systems. They all get muddled together in this concept, this overarching concept of a PIM. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this series, is because I think that sometimes the software vendors in particular make their technology sound more complex than it is in order to justify their existence and to justify their price tag. But at its core, if we wanted to break down really simply as possible, what a PIM is and does for a business, and I'm going to hand it over to you in a second, but through the lens that I work through, it's pretty simple. It's about where is a platform or a technology or a system other than spreadsheets? Because before people jump into a PIM or MDM platform or DAM platform, they're oftentimes managing every piece of their product data in a series of spreadsheets, whether that's Excel, Google Sheets, whatever it might be. They collate and they collect together, and sometimes they even create their product data in a spreadsheet. And then as the first point of call in their digital systems, they might directly upload that spreadsheet of product data directly into their e-commerce platform, say, for example, or into their ERP or whatever it is that they're using as that single source of truth for the bulk of their product data. But the challenge is that building in custom logic, building in the ability to support data elements other than pure textual data, so the ability to support files, PDF files, drawings, images, videos, exploded drawings, MSDSs, long description, short description, structured data, unstructured data. Spreadsheets, great, don't get me wrong, but the reality is you pretty rapidly as a brand, and that it doesn't matter whether you're B2C, D2C, or B2B, you pretty rapidly outgrow the ability to manage and maintain product data purely in spreadsheets. And most of the brands that try, and they even do it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they got multiple people contributing to different sheets, and then they'll maybe do a pivot table and they'll merge multiple sheets together. Multiple people across the organization contribute to, and sometimes they even get contributions from outside third parties that then have to be given access to their spreadsheets where they can add data in. It turns into a unwieldy monster very quickly, and that's why this concept of a dedicated piece of technology as part of the commerce stack called PIM MDM really came into being, as I see it, because spreadsheets just are not a great place for managing your product data long-term, version control, roll back, roll forward, roll up and roll down of data across variants, etc. It's just not a good place to house this kind of logic for the long term, because stuff can get lost, it can get overwritten. Trying to find stuff on a shared network drive inside the business becomes a nightmare. And then needing to integrate those sheets into other third-party systems also is a nightmare. And I guess fundamentally, when we think about what a PIM system is and does and why they even exist in the world of software, that's why. Because spreadsheets are pretty crap at managing product data.
Absolutely, absolutely. Many of the projects, I can actually confidently say every project that we have gone to, and we say, okay, where's your data currently? One of the where is my data currently examples is always Excel. Right? Excel is always used. Excel is a great tool, don't get me wrong, but it's the wrong tool for exactly the reasons what you mentioned, right? It does not support all kinds of data. And most importantly, nowadays, like you talked about, the unstructured data, the unorganized aspect of product information is becoming a lot more important for commerce and in general giving the right customer experience, right? Imagine you and me right now, we go to a website to buy something, and if there's no image, that itself is a deterrent, right? In 2017, Shortform actually had published an article saying 87% of the buyers would not come back to a website if they don't see rich content or structured content, a good quality content or incorrect content, right? So that's the kind of impact we're talking about. It's not a small impact, small number. And versioning, one of the other issues that we have seen in many customers is that the different touch points that they have with the customers are not. It's because version 1 of Excel was loaded into system 1 and version 3 of Excel was loaded into version 3. And what is the truth? We talk about single source of truth. There is no single source of truth in a Excel based system, and that is the problem. And that's what PIM was set out to solve, saying what Excel and files and Word documents, and this is not going to cut it. Access database is also not going to cut it. It needs to be a smart repository, a smart system that can, of course, solve all these situations that the companies are dealing with, right? So you absolutely hit the nail right on the head. It's Excel is the biggest competition to PIM, honestly, in most of the implementations, because even after you implement PIM, they still continue to use Excel. And it's okay as long as they're using it correctly, as long as the Excel is smart and it has the intelligence to know that it is old or new, right? So that's really something very critical. Absolutely.
And I think one of the challenges that most brands that I work with, particularly now that I'm deeply focused on the B2B world, one of the challenges that I think many of these brands have is that they don't necessarily see data as an asset, and they don't treat it as an asset. They treat product data as a necessary evil, as opposed to a moat building exercise and a differentiating factor. In if they make the biggest investment in product data versus their competitors, oftentimes that and that alone is enough of a differentiator to allow them to win. It's a situation where it allows them oftentimes to charge higher prices for their product. I have seen the direct benefit of better product data in absolutely every aspect of both the sales process, as well as when we think about the impact on other pieces of technology within the stack: search, merchandising, personalization, every other block in the building block of the stack of digital commerce relies on good quality product data to perform at its best. If you've got a search, merchandising, and personalization platform and it has no product data to work with, it can't do its job properly. And this is true of everything. Everything in the MarTech and AdTech stack, without good product data, none of it works well. It has the natural and default expectation that there is a treasure trove of great product data to work with in order for it to do its job, and especially in the age of AI. In the absence of great product data, it's garbage in, garbage out. And that's true of every AI system on the planet today. We're already seeing that. When AI systems are trained on the broad data of the internet, which is of wildly varying quality, you get wildly varying results. And it's exactly the same thing when we have poor product data inside our businesses. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on businesses approaching data as an asset, as I feel like that is almost a foundational element. Until they change their mindset and start viewing data as an asset worthy of upfront and ongoing investment, they probably are never going to get the ROI out of a platform like a PIM, right?
Absolutely.
But once they do, once their mindset changes and once they realize data is an asset, it is the new oil, and it will make them more successful across every aspect of their business, not just the direct selling aspect of their business. Something happens when a business gets religion around product data as an asset, and man, does it change everything they do inside the business and the priority in which it's done.
Yes, absolutely. And Jason, at many levels, I think it's also a full-time job for people like us who to evangelize this thought process, right? Because what we have seen, and I'm pretty sure you have also seen, the audience also would have seen the same thing. Everybody is now on the bandwagon of data as an asset, right? They understand the value of data being an asset, but what data and how much of an impact each subset of data segment is causing their business is the second level of drill down that enterprises have not yet truly gotten a handle around, right? Most of the times what we have seen, product data is treated as a second class citizen, third class citizen, maybe sometimes, right? Customer data is the most important thing. Yes, of course, absolutely. Customer is the king. Customers are the ones paying. So customer data is very important, right? But from there, you give this level of importance to customer data and this level of importance to product data. And that is where the disconnect is. And many times we have seen that product data becomes important only when something hits the ceiling. That's a very unfortunate thing, right? Why do you have to wait for some customer to complain, or some big loss in revenue, or some big loss in search rankings or thing? Why do you have to wait? Where is your vision? Where is the future looking thought process on understanding the implication of different types of data and being prepared for it, right? That is the gap that we have seen many times. Just the drill down and the focus and the prioritization. You don't have to do wonders with product data to be level set in the market field, right? Do enough. Do do something. Don't just leave it as a third class citizen. Yeah, that's product data. I know the who cares about it, right? If they can't search for it, they can't search for it. No, things have changed. Customers have become a lot less tolerant to bad quality, and everyone has to be ready for that, right? And the new generations are even more intolerant to things that are not proper. I'll just use the word proper because there are many other words that can come to adjectify that, right? But it's important. So making sure that product data as a project, managing that and making the quality of and really bringing it to the limelight, bringing the value of product data to the forefront. Data is an asset, but product data is a very important asset of the business. And then actually rest of the whole ecosystem will fall into place. Then every enterprise will actually open up the hood and say, what the heck is going on under the hood, and realize that, okay, product data is all over the map, or what we are selling is actually not we are carrying in the Excel file, right? And all those disconnects will start showing up, and a good plan and a blueprint and a strategy will start forming for the company.
I think you hit the nail on the head also when it comes to thinking about the multiple ways in which brands nowadays, suppliers in the B2B world, whether they're a manufacturer, wholesaler, distributor, doesn't matter, the number and variety of channels that they are now selling through is of such a variety, and the expectations of the formatting and the mapping of that data can be wildly different. Amazon, even if you're selling through Amazon Business, which is their B2B arm, they expect the data to come to them in a certain format.
Mm-hmm.
If you're selling on a D2C website, but you've got multiple D2C websites in multiple languages, multiple currencies, multiple price lists, multiple everything to do with the product, you need to be able to slice and dice your data in a massive variety of ways. Some platforms support, for example, multivariant products, whereas some platforms do not, and so you have to send every variant as its own individual SKU into that channel. Social selling is different again, right? We have platforms like Fair. We have now that DC360 estimates, I think the statistic is that they expect by the end of 2024 for there to be over 1,000 global known B2B only or B2B focused marketplaces out in the world, right?
Yeah.
We all know Amazon is the dominant player in the B2C and D2C world. They don't yet own the B2B world. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of vertical and category specific marketplaces out there in the B2B world that Amazon has nothing to do with. They don't even carry products in those categories and verticals yet.
Absolutely.
And so what we're seeing is we're seeing an explosion in the channels that B2B suppliers are both collecting product data from, but also sending data out to. And what we're seeing is that, again, going back to that spreadsheet model, having a different spreadsheet for every channel, slicing and dicing the data 100 different ways to send it out to 100 different destinations and gathering it in 100 different formats, standardizing it, streamlining it, aggregating it, rationalizing it, and then making sure that only when each SKU reaches a certain state of enrichment before it's allowed to go out to a sales channel, spreadsheets just can't handle this exploding level of channel complexity in the marketplace that is now. It used to be that really only B2C brands had to worry about this exploding level of channel variety. Now B2B brands are having to worry about the exact same thing, and they're realizing our back office systems are not up to snuff to deal with this explosion of channels. And so therefore, they're not taking advantage of all the sales channels they could because it's so difficult to get their product data into the format required and into the mapping required for those channels.
Absolutely. And that's where many of the new up and coming syndication focused players have a lot of value to add, right? Because you said it right. If the number of marketplaces and the endpoints and the customer touch points are going to increase, then obviously there has to be a much more smarter way, intelligent way of doing syndication to all these data points and catering to their standards, catering to their formats, catering to their data quality standards, the data models and the valid values and the lookups and the references. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes. Syndication is just a word, but behind the scene, it's an ocean. And distributors have this unique challenge where they have to deal with this problem on both sides of the spectrum, right? One side, they have to figure out how to ingest all this data coming from various different formats, schemas, structures, and create their own product catalog and then turn around and start doing the other way. And it is a unique challenge that distributors have. It is, to be honest, it is, of all the categories of problem, is the most difficult problem to solve in this industry. It is not the easiest to solve, but it's, everybody knows the manufacturer, everyone knows the retailer, but the supply chain between is usually behind the scene, just spinning the gears, right? They need to be given the same level of importance. Technology also has to adapt. Companies have to understand the distribution ecosystem and their needs and build solutions to ease out this onboarding and syndication problem for the distributors, right? The problem is not solved yet. I would not claim that, because the first part is to identify the problem, which is what I think we are doing right now, right? We first identify the problem and then we solve the problem. But the problem does exist. It is a very inefficient operation at this point in time when it comes to dealing with data. And it's, some places it's an awareness issue, some places it's a process issue, some places it's a standards issue, some places it's just the fact that there is no automation or there's no vision about how they should be. And the last thing, by the time they get to solving the problem, the rug has been pulled under their feet and a new concept and a new technology. You put everything nice in a repository and big data came, and then cloud came, and then AI came, and then now the Gen AI has come, and things will keep coming. How do you prepare in a way that you are not only designing for now, but you're designing for future? So it's not an easy problem to solve, but there are some things that can be done. There are a few people, few companies, few industry leaders can come together, create some standard. Automotive industry has actually, in a way, solved this problem to a decent level with the whole AutoK standards and the tech doc. And so it's not that the problem cannot be solved. It's just that it takes some work, industry by industry, vertical by vertical, domain by domain, and get to solving the problem.
Takes a collective will to make things happen at scale, because this is a big challenge. One of the other things, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, that adds to the complexity of PIM-MDM solutions and how we interact with them in the B2B world versus the B2C world is that typically if you get an attribute wrong around a coffee mug or a TV or something like that, no one's going to die, right? People aren't going to get injured. They're not going to get hurt. They're not going to, there's very rarely are there massive compliance considerations. Okay, maybe around the edges, maybe around cannabis and where we can sell products, cannabis products, etc. All that kind of stuff comes into play. Sure, there is, and supplements and things like that. There are compliance issues. I'm not trying to say there are zero compliance issues around data in the B2C and D2C world, but they are oftentimes of less significance or less severity, and oftentimes they don't apply as much of a broad-based way as they do in the B2B world. Because if you just take electrical, for example, electrical products or pumping products or hygiene products or almost anything that you think of in the industrial B2B space, these almost all have some form of rating or compliance or capability perspective or material safety data sheet around it, if it's a solvent or it's a glue or it's whatever it might be. Or building materials, for example, and how much of a load of a steel beam can handle, for example. Compliance and product data and safety data and capability data and attributes around these products become mission critical, because in some cases, people's lives are literally on the line. If you're supplying the aerospace industry with a material or an adhesive and you accidentally map the wrong capability to the wrong SKU and they use it in a way, we've seen issues with Boeing already over the last couple of years, and it's not all down to product data, but we see along the industrial supply chain in particular that product data is absolutely mission critical to get right, because in some cases lives hang in the balance.
Yeah, I'll shed a different perspective on that, Jason, if you don't mind.
Love it.
I'll take a recent example of one of the customers that we were doing blueprinting for. They're manufacturers, but I think what I'll explain on what we saw will give the perspective. This is a company that manufactures industrial bearings for heavy equipments, and they manufacture bearings all the way from surgical grade, the dental equipment,
Micro bearings all the way up to
micro bearings, all the way to 10 feet big bearings that go into airplanes and jet propulsion system, jet engines and stuff like that. One of the execs in that company, when we were doing the blueprinting, made a statement that product data quality is so important. Let me give an example. If one of the specs of my bearing actually ends up being wrong, airplanes will start falling from the sky, literally, right? Because like you said, it's that critical. Now, what happened is this particular statement, if taken as is and applied with a little bit of due diligence and discovery, can lead to a very high amount of inefficiency down the system. So what happened is, when they heard this, they said, okay, absolutely nothing can be wrong, and no errors can pass through my ecosystem, and so on. And the pendulum swung so much onto one extreme that the governance model they created and the data quality setup that they had and the processes that they laid out were very thorough and very diligent and so on.
rigid, right?
Rigid. What they missed is that every product does not need to go through the same process, right? Now,
Let's segment the products, right?
surgical products, yes, they have to go through that process.
Aeronautical bearings,
Products,
of course.
yes, they have to go through. But regular 60 to 70% of the products that they carry need not be as stringent as the remaining 30%, right? And even in that 30% that has to have extreme level of governance and data quality, if your product has 200 attributes, only 40 of them need to go through that.
Not and all 200 attributes.
Not all 200. Product description, who cares if there's a spelling mistake?
Yeah.
You do care, but your airplanes are not falling from the sky, right?
Yeah.
So,
whereas if the ID or the OD are wrong, for example, then that becomes that is mission critical.
Exactly. So in Thoughtspark, working with Syndico, working with Reversa, and we used to have a philosophy of defining lanes for data. In a highway, not all the 3 lanes or all the 4 lanes are supposed to be for the same speed, right? You have a slow speed lane, you have a high speed lane, right? You have certain lanes that have toll, certain that maybe not have toll, or things like that, right? You have different lanes, you have a different highway system. So handling data, it should be looked at that way. You're designing a highway system, you're designing a lane system. You should be able to say, okay, these 30% they could either be by product category or by certain rule that you can define that say, okay, these are critical products, the quality of data and concerns and requirements are high, so they will go through the high quality, rest of them can go through low quality, right? And within that, these are the attributes. So you do that. Now, what can be done for the low quality? Automation, right? Generate the descriptions automatically. Don't have to, a person doesn't have to manually create the description. If at least one image is there, it is okay. If our MSDS datasheet is there, it's fine. In the 30%, the MSDS datasheet has to be reviewed by an SME before it leaves the check, right? In the other, just having the existence maybe is okay. So define these highways, and this is what will make sure that the team of 20 or team of 30 people that this company has to work on the data quality are actually working on the mission critical aspects of data quality. This is how they can actually scale through the PIM implementation journey, right? This is one of the things that we used to prescribe. Where is your lane system? Where is your highway system? That's what we would do, saying any requirement that comes in, where does it apply to? Have a philosophy. MDM core team should actually have a set of governance principles, guiding principles saying every request that comes in, where did where does it fall? And every downstream issue or data or feedback that they come in should also guide them saying, okay, you know what, this is what they need to fix. This is where they need to tighten the screw of the process. Right? So yes, data, some aspects of data in the industrial engineering companies is very critical. And that 80% or 90% of their staff should be focused just on that, by making sure remaining keeps flowing with just 10% of the effort. That's how they can get scale. That is how they can think of onboarding a new product line or acquiring a new company and integrating that without worrying that, okay, you know what, I have to onboard 20,000 SKUs more. I don't have staff to do it. No, that fear, that concern can be elevated by strategizing, designing the right philosophy in your payment MDM systems.
Yeah, and for the top 10% or the top 30% of products that have to have perfect attribution, they have to have all attributes, they might have to have 95% of attributes filled. You might say, okay, for the other products in our catalog, the attribution completeness level before they can be distributed to the channels is a lot less. You might say, okay, only 50% of attributes, or maybe only 10% of the attributes have to be completed before then that product data can then be syndicated to other sales channels, for example.
Exactly.
And
Because
so I
that
think
will be the phase one. They can always come back and iteratively work on enriching that and increasing the
in all their spare time, which they always seem to have.
spare time. Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think the other thing is that, especially in the B2B world, we tend to have, and I've seen this in my experience, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. We have three primary sources of base data before we can start enriching, and we can add all these attributes that would apply, say, for example, in a faceted or a filtered way on the front end of an e-commerce website. So we've got a base, a core set of data that usually comes from one of three sources in the B2B world that I've witnessed. One is, if you're a manufacturer, then oftentimes the core data will come from a PLM, a product lifecycle management platform. So when they, all the way from the initial concept, the designs, the CAD drawings, the packaging, all that sort of stuff, that will oftentimes originate in some form of PLM platform, and that produces your base set of data. Now, that usually doesn't contain any romance copy. It doesn't contain any sales assets. It doesn't contain anything that would relate to describing a product aesthetically or anything like that. This is the core data that we require to actually even get the product manufactured in the first place.
Yeah,
and that originates in the PLM, right? Then we oftentimes will have a little bit of additional data that might come from an ERP. So we might have, out of the ERP, we'll typically have the SKU, we might have the name, we might have a short description, maybe a sentence, we might have the pricing, we might have the product relationships, like between a group of products or a kit of products, maybe, but sometimes that only lives in the PIM. But then we have this third source of data, because very few manufacturers are only manufacturers in my experience. They are oftentimes, they might manufacture 10% of their catalog, but the other 90%, they might be a distributor of products as well. And so they're oftentimes going and getting product data and sourcing it from manufacturers of other products in their catalog, and they're trying to aggregate it together, and they're trying to raise up the overall data quality of all products, regardless of source. They're trying to bring into the business a minimum level of enrichment, what we call enrichment in the industry, so that when they go to market with their product data, it is of an absolute bare, they've set a standard. Here's the bare minimum that we will go to market with our product data. Otherwise, we simply will not put it out for sale because it doesn't meet our minimum standard. And is this what you're seeing too? Now, there's others, lesser perhaps sources, but those are the three primary sources we see in the B2B world of aggregating as a start, as the baseline, where they start aggregating data from.
Yeah, absolutely. We used to have terms for all these. So we would call the engineering or the manufacturing specific data, we would call them the core data of the product, because that's really what is needed to start even manufacturing the product. Then the second segment, what you said, SAP data and other, we used to call that logistics and distribution data, because that's the information that is used for all of the logistics and really moving the product around and being able to sell the product at a basic level, right? Foundational level. And rest everything.
Dimensional, weight, size of packaging, all that sort of stuff.
Packaging
so that as it goes through the supply chain, we know what the volumetric weight of a product is going to be able to even ship it, for example.
Exactly. And the third data was everything else, which was all of enrichment and romantic aspects of it and beautification and rest of the information and accessories and cross sells and all of the promotions that you want to do, all of that you would be in the third category. And we would actually ask our customers to first segment everything in these three buckets, and then within that say, okay, what's must have, what's nice to have, what's important. So yeah, those three segments is something that we also used to follow. And of course, if this is a product that is manufactured by the manufacturer themselves, they would have be the source or the origin for the core data. The supply chain data also they would have to create, because they will have to figure out how to package them in a pallet. 3 of them go or 6 of them go. They know how those pallets are created and so on. But in case of the other products that they don't manufacture themselves, but they're reselling, all of that information comes from external. Right? They may or may not even enrich much, because many times these are long tail products. These are not their core set of products that they add to their revenue stream. Right? It's something that they have to carry so that the customers get the complete offering.
Yeah. So they're seen as a solution provider instead of a SKU provider.
Exactly. If it's a building constructions company, then you need to have you need to have all the plugs and the cables and the wirings and all the stuff that goes as part of the wall with the wiring and the plug and the outlet. So that's how we have seen. Absolutely, yes.
And this becomes a challenge outside of a PIM system that's designed to be able to do this. If you've only got a spreadsheet and you've only got either a Google sheet or an Excel sheet, and it becomes almost impossible to easily collate and aggregate and receive and map in this product data, which it could be coming from literally 100 different suppliers into your systems. Mm-hmm. They all have their own formatting. They all have their own mapping. They all have their own standards. They all have their own data breadth and depth. And trying to standardize a way to collect this and get it mapped into your system without technology to be able to assist in this process, it's almost a never-ending and it's almost a completely unachievable task.
Yeah.
To my way of thinking, especially in the B2B world, where you're oftentimes aggregating, again, you might have a catalog of 500,000 SKUs, and 400,000 of those SKUs might be coming from third-party suppliers, and that's a wild array of data quality and completeness, right?
Yeah.
And so that's another way in which I see PIMs that have an external connector, either in an automated way to grab data from their PLMs or their ERPs or their PIM systems, where you can map it via API layer, or at the very worst case scenario, you have an interface where those suppliers can upload their CSV or their spreadsheet of product data that kicks off the process of enrichment as it goes through your internally gated workflow before it's allowed to go out to your customers. And so it feels like technology has a massive role to play in easing this process of collecting, aggregating, cleansing, validating, and mapping data coming from a wide variety of suppliers and a wide variety of formats.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the next set of innovation in this industry is going to happen exactly in this space. It's about discovering the data smartly and making sure that we can the mapping is not too tedious, the mapping is not too complicated, and if the source data is not easily mappable, if that's a word, what should happen, right? It should not stop the process. Can it be staged somewhere? Can it be at least brought to the visibility of an SME that they can go and map it and do this whole thing easily, do this whole process in less than a day? You load the file, the report is available, these are the attributes that are not there, these are the attributes that are not mapped. Within a day, can somebody go and just fix the issues, and in the future intelligently, automatically fix these issues? AI takes over. Hopefully one day Gen AI should take over this aspect of mapping, and that will definitely revolutionize this space. I think that is the innovation that is pending to happen in this particular industry, in the whole integration space. And this is true not only for just product data integration through a vendor portal that somebody's uploading, or to the API feeds or EDI feeds or things like that. This is a problem in the integration space today. Integration space has been a space for 50 years now. ETL, EAI, we have been hearing about these things, cloud, hybrid cloud integrations, blah, blah, blah. Still, we have the challenge where I cannot take my file and give it to you, Jason, and your system can interpret it and load it. Whether it's product data, customer data, or cuckoo data, as one of our colleagues used to say, it doesn't matter, right? That it's a very interesting state we are in it right now. ELT, ETL, there are ETLT, there are terms that are being thrown, technologies that are charging millions and billions of dollars, but the problem is yet unsolved. So if anybody at this integration space, and again, you flip it, the same problem is true for syndication also. It's exactly the same problem with a view, with a mirror view, right? There is absolutely no difference. I have this data set with me. I know I want to send it to Amazon. I know Amazon's schema, and technologies even today is not able to solve that problem for me. What an irony, right? When we talk about being in the tech world and the 25-year experienced geeks and blah blah, that's the reality. This is a very critical problem that needs to be solved, and I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, this is where innovation is going to happen.
Yeah,
The whole
we're already
integration
starting to see
space
it
has
with AI. We're already starting to see AI-driven technologies. I've featured a few of them on my podcast previously. DDS, DataX. There's a few vendors that specialize in just this, and it is definitely getting attention because of the scale of the challenge, which equals the scale of the opportunity.
Exactly.
And so this is a big deal. And what I'm seeing is that in the B2B world, more often than not, some of the reasons why these B2B brands initially set up their own wholesale e-commerce website is to make it easier, especially if they don't have a PIM yet, is to make it easier to connect their platform to marketplaces, to social selling channels, to other physical selling channels, to being able to create catalogs, etc. They use the e-commerce platform as a middleware tool. They use it as a PIM. They use it as an aggregation of product data inside the e-commerce platform just to make it easier, just to force them into a model that's consistent around their product data that makes it easier to then map that product data and its categorization, etc., out to these other digital sales channels, e-procurement, EDI, etc. Sometimes the biggest motivation of creating a self-service e-commerce website isn't to sell through necessarily, although they will open it up for that. It's to ease the technological burden of selling into other channels. What they oftentimes don't realize until they talk to somebody like me or you is that's not what those technologies were initially designed to do. They weren't, yeah, you can shoehorn them into that job, but if they had a proper PIM MDM platform, then they could do all the data work inside that platform before it goes out to that plethora of other sales channels.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. That is so true. In fact, again, so many examples are coming through my mind. Just because it is so hard to solve the integration problem doesn't mean onboarding that problem onto yourself, because it's very limiting. It's limiting in so many different ways. You have kind of taken on the problem of what these marketplaces can do, and there's specialty skill sets that makes them unique and the differentiators. Now you have to onboard each of that differentiator into your own ecosystem and become good at everything to even exist and survive. This is a very simple kind of a build versus buy mindset, right? I'm a technologist, I can build everything. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. There's a value of price, there's a value, there's an aspect of cost, there's an aspect of staying current in that particular realm, right? Tomorrow something changes in the social media and a new TikTok comes up or a new thing comes up. We have to just keep busy. We'll be busy just staying up to date with how the technology is evolving, right? I was on a panel a few years back, and the talk was about SEO, search engine optimization, and what should companies do to be prepared with SEO, right? And the discussion actually went into, should you have your own e-com and build SEO within that using the capabilities of the e-com, or should you just rely on Google and their engine for just send your product data and make optimize for search within Google and use that as a service? This was the topic, actually, very interestingly. And one of the feedback that came was, if Google keeps changing the algorithm, and you have to keep yourself up to date. You have to make sure your data is continuously being prepared and re-prepared to be in alignment with the algorithm within Google. That itself is not an easy thing. Imagine doing that within your own e-com platform. The technology will keep changing, and you're like, what are you even doing? Why do you even need to have a team like that? It is, yes, Google keeps changing, but there are so many consultants and specialists out there that can help you adapt in a jiffy. It's not rocket science. It's work, but it is very predictable, doable work instead of trying to onboard the problem in house, right? So same way, you can sit and build your own ecom platform and try to do the whole thing, or figure out a simpler, smarter strategy to integrate with the marketplaces and just expand your reach.
No question
Imagine
about that.
trying to become a TikTok with your own commerce marketplace.
Yeah, and how are you going to do that? We're seeing more B2B brands enter the world of TikTok and Instagram than ever before. People don't think it, but these industrial companies, they're showing the back office process. They're showing the manufacturing and the precision of their manufacturing. People love behind the scenes content of how the things that they use in their everyday life are actually made. There's a massive fascination with this. And B2B brands are getting more airtime and getting more interest than ever before. And they're able to find new customers organically in new markets that they never thought they would be able to sell into through some of these social selling channels. Now, as we're coming down, an hour's nearly rushed by here. But the final thing I'll finish on, and it tails a little bit onto the SEO thing that you talked about. Now, I'm gonna walk through some of the data quality issues that I've witnessed and I've had to help brands with, because usually the first thing that I do when I start consulting to these B2B brands is give me an example of a cross section of 50-year products, average in the way that you normally attribute them. Show me an example of the product data that you have across 50 of your products. And usually when I see that, I can immediately tell them where half the challenges in their businesses are and will be in selling in digital channels, just by looking at sample data. And here's some of the challenges I've seen, but I want to contextualize these challenges mainly through the lens of SEO, because historically B2B brands have completely ignored SEO to the point where they have gated their login to where you can't see anything. You can't even see the catalog. You can't see the products. You can't see the prices. You can't see the inventory. You can see nothing unless you authenticate. And that means that Google also can't see anything, because of Google can't authenticate into your website. So these are some of the challenges I routinely see. And then I'm going to talk just a little bit about the impact on customer acquisition via SEO, because this data quality is a challenge. So I see incomplete data. I see inaccurate data. I see ambiguous data. I see outdated data. I see no product relationships, no cross-sales, no upsells, no substitutions, no equivalents, no product succession tracked anywhere in any system except maybe the ERP. I see issues where the ERP is used as the single source of truth for all product data. I see many cases where there is zero supplemental product data, no images, no videos, no PDFs, no exploded drawings, no spreadsheets, no romance copy, and zero spec sheets. This is something that I see so routinely in the B2B world that it's almost an epidemic. And it's pretty surprising that, and maybe not every brand has every one of these issues. They'll have one or two or three of these issues. Mm-hmm. But this becomes a real problem when these brands now are saying to me, they say to Jason, we have historically never acquired customers digitally, but we want to start. We want to open up our catalog. Okay, maybe you still have to log in to be able to buy, and maybe you still have to log in to see a price, and maybe you still have to log in to see inventory, but at least we're going to open our catalog up so that the long tail of all these products with all this rich product data can be indexed by Google, so that when somebody is searching for a supplier of widget X and we're a supplier of widget X, we'll be part of their consideration set for a supplier of widget X. But then when we get under the bonnet, we go, you're not ready. You are lacking so much product information that there's nothing for Google to actually index so that it knows you supply products with all of these attributes, right? And so therefore, again, garbage in, garbage out. Google can't index what it can't see and it doesn't have access to. And I see more brands than ever before wanting to, because buyers nowadays, like over 60% of them are millennials. They're not going to the yellow pages to find a supplier. They are not going to a trade show necessarily to find a supplier. They're not jumping into a chat room with their friends working in the industry and saying, where do you source these things? They're going to Google, just like they do in their personal life to buy a new t-shirt. They're going to Google to find a supplier of widget X if that's what they're after. And if you're going to be in that consideration set, you better start addressing your product data before you open up your catalog to be indexed by the search engines.
Absolutely. Yeah. And most of the times, I think this has happened because there's a tremendous shift and a change in the generation of shoppers, right? The older generation of shoppers were okay with the more paywall and account and that kind of a thing. But today, I think even we have changed into the newer mindset where you go to a website, and if it's asking you to create an account, if there's no value, I won't create an account. I'm like, okay, can I find this information somewhere else? Right? I want the information I want to be available at my fingertips ASAP with the least effort, enough to be able to start making a decision. And then when it's research, I'm okay to create an account and go and do deeper research. So this, and I think the generation has changed much quicker. The expectations of the generation, whether it is about understanding like how the manufacturing happens, the whole aspect of ESG, the transparency, the sustainability, the governance, there are so many emotional aspects around the quality of data, the authenticity of data, and things like that has now come up. I don't think the companies have a choice anymore but to open up their catalog. Just the fact that they're a bit too slow and a bit too late at this point in time, they have a lot of catch up to do. This was obvious 4 or 5 years back, around 2014, 2015, 2016. Actually, the trends were very clear that this is where the industry is going to go. The innovative companies have actually done that, jumped onto the bandwagon, but unfortunately, a lot of companies still need to make that transition, make that jump. Understanding the audience, understanding the sentiment and the emotion and the needs and the asks of the new generation, I think will help direct the management of our customers and these organizations to prioritize what needs to be done. Really, what aspect of data has to be brought up front. In fact, there's a whole concept of product driven sales where your product actually and the content of the product should do the selling. Don't invest in sales and marketing team to actually sell the product. They should define a strategy, and the product and the content itself should sell itself. How the new age shopping is going to be. No brand, the trust on the brand, the credibility of the brand, the quality of the product data, and the quality of the product itself. That's it. This is what is going to define how customers buy in the future, very near future. I'm not talking 50 years. I'm talking maybe few years. By the time our kids go to college or even before that, this is going to happen. And for a company, it's about a 3 to 5 year journey for them to a decent sized company. I'm saying a smaller company could get that done in an year or so, but any decent sized company that has either a global operation or a multi-brand kind of thing or a multi-division kind of thing, multi-channel kind of thing, it's easily, the whole strategy aspect is 2 to 3 years. So might as well start looking at it right now. Otherwise, the puck will again move and then you'll again start running behind the puck. I think the companies need to follow where the puck is going, not just chase the puck.
Yes, not where it is today. No question about that, because consumer expectations, even in the B2B world, they're only increasing, and their last best experience with a supplier becomes their new minimum standard. Just like in the B2C and D2C world, if I have a fantastic experience on a D2C website or I have a fantastic experience on a marketplace or whatever, that becomes the new normal for me.
That becomes a bare minimum. Yep.
And anybody else that doesn't measure up, it's going to be an automatic disappointment for me as a consumer. And it's exactly the same in the B2B buying world. Shyam, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it. An hour is absolutely blasted by. I'm really looking forward to continuing the series with you and the team at Thoughtspark. I don't know, this is probably going to turn into between a 2 and a 4 episode series because we've got a lot of ground to cover. And some of the next things that we'll cover are PIM MDM basics. We did get into a little bit of that today, but I think we'll start from the ground up. We'll talk about that next. And we've got a whole lot of other topics around this PIM MDM for B2B. We've got a lot of ground to cover here because I think, as you rightly pointed out, this is something that doesn't get talked about enough. It is, I call it forbidden knowledge, right? There are some of us who have been working in this industry for a really long time, have some pretty deep experience in this space, but not too many people talk about it. They hold it really close to their chest and they say, that's what makes me special as a consultant, or maybe as an SI, or maybe as a vendor, or whatever. This is what sets us apart. And so therefore I'm going to hold it close to my chest. I think of it in exactly the opposite way. I think that we need to try to grow the pie so that, and if we do good work, whether that be Thoughtspark, me, the vendors, Syndigo, whoever it might be, Salsify, it doesn't really matter. If we do good work, we're always going to get our share of the pie because there's only so many of us out there that can help in these scenarios. But if we grow the pie by helping more and more B2B brands understand the value of PIM MDM to their business and its transformational capability as the foundation of digital transformation, then automatically that is simply going to level up the quality that the brands are delivering to the world. It's going to create more trust. It's going to create more demand for them as suppliers, and therefore more demand for us as service providers in the space. So I think it's a virtuous cycle. So for me, I'm willing to share absolutely everything I know as best as I can in a way that's as accessible as possible because I'm trying to grow the pie, and I know you are too.
Absolutely. I think our goal should be to create a situation where there is more business than people to handle. And that would be an amazing situation to be in, right? Because that's companies have understood the value and we just don't have enough people to go and solve the problem. That's the best case scenario. That's what even we believe in, that philosophy. Create a market and just people grow into delivering the solution. That's the right thing to do.
Amazing. Listen, this has been a fantastic conversation. Really appreciate your time. Can't wait to speak to you again soon and get into the next few major topics around PIM MDM for B2Bs. Thank you so much, Shyam. Can't wait to speak to you again soon. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.